Hello everyone! With patch 6.25, we got a brand new type of dungeon, those being the variant dungeon and the more difficult version, the criterion dungeon. Currently, we only have one dungeon like this, being the Sil'dih subterranean, a dungeon with 12 possible solutions which reward us at the end with one adorably fluffy mount. But to me, the dungeon is not just interesting for the mechanic of obtaining the different endings, it also brings some interesting lore about the history of Ul'dah, Sil'dih, Belah'dia, and the Sultana and her parents. So in this video, I'm going to go over our journey through the dungeon, along with giving you quite a bit of groundwork to understand the significance of the areas and the discoveries we make. Please keep in mind this spoils the entirety of the variant dungeon, including telling you the solutions and what lore bits we're given through it, along with some spoilers up to at least patch 6.1, if not 6.2 just to be safe. So you have been warned, so let's get into it. To begin, we have to go back, so far back that Ul'dah, or even Sil'dih, did not exist yet, but instead the city of Belah'dia. It was founded shortly after the Sixth Umbral Calamity, the calamity of water, which brought terrifying destruction to the land via large flood. This calamity was the end to the War of Magi, and at the time changed the view of magic for many people. Once a power feared and respected as the foundation of civilizations, it now became shunned and hated, and even forbidden outright. The heirs to the magical city of Myrrh were the ones to head into Thanalan in search for water, and when they found it, they staked their claim and made the city of Belah'dia. It was a city founded on desperation, the basic need for survival, the need for water, shelter, and food. But as time passed and the land healed, it became a strong and prosperous city-state. It was governed as a sultanate, with the power passing from the sultan to his heir for generations, until the year 965, when the current sultan grew deathly ill and was confined to his sickbed for the final year of his life. At the time, he had two sons, Sasagan and Sasavefu, and both wanted to rule the city after their father passing, so they called for the soldiers loyal to them and plunged their nation into civil war. By the year 969, they had torn the nation of Belah'dia apart, and instead formed the twin nations of Sil'dih, led by Sasavefu, and Ul'dah, led by Sasagan. The cities would hold similar banner based on the original Belah'dia banner, a scale balancing the two icons representing the city. For Sil'dih, it was the helm of might and the fruit of knowledge, while Ul'dah took the flame of magic and the gem of affluence as theirs. But even with a city of their own, the brothers would still not see eye to eye, finding myriad of reasons to fight. And even after the brothers passed away, the hate between the cities remained, and disputes for many. The largest dispute was over water. It was in the year 1159 when Lalavefu, the king of Sil'dih, instituted flood control to save his nation's failing economy. He began drawing water from the upper reaches of Ul'dah's water source, act that had him named as the king of springs by his nation, but was seen as theft of the people of Ul'dah. Tensions would keep on rising, with further droughts till 1177, when King Lalavefu died from illness. This momentary chaos within Sil'dih spurred Ul'dah into action. Ul'dah gathered their army and marched forth to reclaim their water source, and such began the War of the Sisters. This war would last for 3 years and end in pure horror. The city of Sil'dih was surrounded, basically trapping the people there within, as outside waited nothing but the army of Ul'dah. But with that came a stalemate. Neither side would back down. So Ul'dah finally changed the course of history, not through peace, but through a nightmare. It was the year 1181, which could turn corpses into zombies. So as the Ul'dah army laid siege to Sil'dih and starved the city, they threw the powder over the walls, and what followed within the city was nothing less than pure hell. Anguished screams could be heard from over the walls as people watched their fellow man get cut down or starve to death, only to rise again, to join the horde in massacring their fellow citizen. The scene was so horrible that the Sultanate decided that no one could ever know what truly happened there. The official story became that the people of Sil'dih had started turning their dead into zombies to win the war. And with this, the immortal flames were founded and sent in to wipe out the city and the undead within. And the true story of what happened there was put into hiding. But Ul'dah was not done with Sil'dih. No, the impressive water system of Sil'dih was too valuable to simply throw away. So instead, a new Ul'dah was built on top of Sil'dih, very efficiently erasing the city from existence, but leaving a vast subterranean system, which is the area we end up exploring, including the Sil'dih Royal Palace. This is the same water system we went through during the Bloody Banquet, but it is just so much bigger than we could ever imagine. After the war, the powder was put under close guard, and the truth of what happened to Sil'dih was kept secret from everyone. And they managed to keep it a secret for about good 40 years. It was then that Baldur Thorne, a noble known as a righteous and honorable man, found the truth. Horrified with what he had learned, he exposed it, both what had happened to the people and that the current Sultan was the one behind it. The Sultan in turn tried to have Baldur executed, but instead was imprisoned within the Marasaya pit till his death. Baldur Thorne took the role of the city ruler, starting the Thorne dynasty, though he did so with the promise that eventually his line would return the rule back to the Ul dynasty, a promise they would actually keep. For the next 130 years, Ul'dah would be led by the Thorne dynasty, a time of great innovation and growth for the city. But during this time, a great crisis took place, when undead hordes started emerging from the ruins of Sil'dih beneath Ul'dah. It was in 1353 when the current Thorne Sultan enlisted the Amalj'aa for help, and with the tribe believing that Thanalan is sacred, believing it's the place they were given sentience by their god Ifrit, something I talk about a little bit in my video on Ifrit. So for a time, this made a tentative cooperation between the enemies of the Amalj'aa and Ul'dah, showing that the two groups can actually work quite well together, even if they're quite different. Eventually, the rule of the city was returned to the Ul dynasty, and with time, it would end under the rule of Nanamo's father. Her father was the son of the royal house of Ul, but her mother was the daughter of a modest merchant. Love blossomed between them during a banquet held to mingle the nobility and the commoners together. The two became extremely close and working very well together. When Nanamo turned 5, she was gifted a key from her parents, but they did not tell her what lock the key was meant for. And they never managed to do so, as not long after her birthday, they died in a tragic accident. Or at least, that's the official story. Nanamo was crowned Sultana and thrown into the complex Ul'dah politics. Within the city, we have both the Sultanate, and we also have a faction known as the Syndicate, which is a faction of the most wealthy and powerful members of the city. Influence and most importantly wealth are the criteria for membership, and the seats on the Syndicate can be bought. Syndicate members typically fall into two camps: royalists who support the monarchy, and the monetarists who prefer to displace the monarchy and exert more control over the city-state. And while today Nanamo has gained a reasonably good control over the Syndicate, it was not such when she was only 5 years old. She was only a child, and the Syndicate was heavily ruled by the monetarists, leading to Nanamo becoming little more than a puppet for their machinations. She did not gain a notable ally till years later in the Colosseum, when a contestant named Rauban al-Din managed to earn his place in the Syndicate, and as the Flame General. With him by his side, along with the assistance of the Warrior of Light, the Science, and the Orsian Alliance leaders, Nanamo began regaining power. And now an Endwalker has become a formidable ruler who works hard to bring peace between Ul'dah and the Amalj'aa. But one day, a damaged gate is discovered within the Sil'dih aqueduct below the city. The gate is locked, but Nanamo believes this might be the lock to her key. So she asks us to join her to the gate and as it's confirmed that this is truly the gate the key was meant for, we end up taking at minimum 12 expeditions with her into the Sil'dih Subterranean, and as we do so, Nanamo writes an entry into her book detailing her thoughts and experience down there. Now, depending on how you go through the dungeon, you can get the different entries to Nanamo's book, but I'm gonna read them in order. Before reading each chapter, I'm gonna tell you how we got each entry before we go into Nanamo's experience. Our first entry is whom the Silkie serves. To do this, we have to go to the left path and pull the lever. When reaching the puzzle room with a variety of sacks, we have to guess correctly. We need to take the blue sack to the right of the door and the yellow sack in the southeastmost corner. As we place them on the pedestal, a teleporter will appear, and we can go through it. We have to defeat some enemies, and as we head on, we will reach a gate. Now, before Nanamo manages to open the gate, we have to move around some rubble and open another one, finding a little secret. As we continue on, we will come to the final boss of the left path, which is the Silkie. Both are rather fun boss, but also our adorable future mount. And so Nanamo writes, "What a surprise to learn that the old palace Silkie was a creation of Mother's. The discovery impelled me to pursue the topic with Papa Shan, who of anyone beside father knew my mother best of all. Naturally, I was circumspect in my inquiries, lest he become aware of my subterranean exploration. With fond remembrance, Papa Shan spoke of mother penance for cleaning, a habit she refused to surrender, even after taking up residence in the royal chamber. Her ladies-in-waiting were positively scandalized, and hid away every brush and broom that the Sultana's hand not be sullied by common grime. Denied the usual tools of sanitation, mother retaliated by employing a Charlayan tutor, whereby she acquired the art necessary to manifest a massive mouse-like familiar. Ingrained with an obsessive dislike for dirt, this arcane entity would even corner the palace guards to scrub spots from their armor, to the great amusement of the household staff. Then one day, without fanfare, the Silkie was simply gone. I suspect the cause of his disappearance lay in the deepening conflict with the monetarists, with less and less time to slip away from the palace. Mother likely set her familiar to protect and maintain the secret garden in her absence. Yet what a stubborn and willful soul she was. To create a servant for cleaning is one thing, but to imbue it with such unbridled power is quite another. At the end of the left path, we found a garden, and in it, a single table with 2 chairs, a place to sit and have some tea, a moment of quiet, away from the responsibility of the Sultanate. A place where Nanamo's mother and father used to go, and this is the place the Silkie now protects. On our second journey, we again go through the left path. We pull the lever again, redirecting the water, and again we do the sack puzzle correctly. But this time we don't go around the rubble to open the gate. We simply let Nanamo open hers and head on. And she writes, "With a mind to prepare for future exploration, I began trawling through the palace archives in search for documents with even a tangential mention of Sil'dih. For the most part, however, the shelves held little in the way of new information. The only account to snare my attention was that of Ul'dah soldier, who had written off his experiences fighting alongside the Belah'dia during the zombie purge. His report touched upon the different approaches new allies took to warfare, and how those differences impeded their cooperative efforts. It was said that the undead which flooded the waterways were beyond counting, and varied wildly in individual strength. The most effective strategy, or so the soldier believed, was to focus their effort on the weaker zombies and thus whittle the horde down to more manageable size. Not so the Belah'dia. When presented with a choice, the proud warriors would always seek to slay the mightiest enemy first. This display of superiority, they explained to the exasperated Ul'dah, was the best way to wage war. To do otherwise, to begin an engagement with the lesser foe, would cast doubt upon one's martial prowess. It would seem they learned to respect each other's reasoning, yet ultimately fought the battles as the people preferred. the Ul'dah soldier returned to his former tactic, targeting the weakest undead for his initial assault. An interesting point of culture mayhap, but a helpful one? That remains to be seen. Our third foray goes again through the left door, and we don't pull the lever. We reach the puzzle with the sacks, and we fail it, so just pick any other sacks and throw on there. And for one, just pick 2 yellow ones. As we proceed through the next room, we come across cotton spores on the ground. Make sure to step into all of them, which will lead us to the third entry. He, a member of the royal family, see the daughter of a modest merchant house. They met at a palace banquet, an opportunity to mix with the notables of commerce, and it was love at first sight. I adore this story. It's so very romantic. Mother would go and tell me of the secluded place wherein father would visit, where they were bound in marriage, of sun-dappled garden at the end of a secret tunnel, where they could enjoy each other's company away from prying eyes and judgmental stares. In other words, a perfect description of the sanctuary we discovered on a recent foray. When they did at last announce the details of their engagement, the location of this magical place where father proposed to mother became the subject of much rumor and debate. I am told that the city merchant, being the same incorrigible creature then as they are now, seized upon this furor to turn a tidy profit. They never did come close to the truth of it, but after visiting the spot myself, it's easy to see why it has remained undisturbed. I imagine the two of them in the younger years, willing away an idle morning amidst the dawn-kissed petals, their haven protected beneath the barrier of Thanalan's scorching sand, and I cannot help but smile. Never until now have I managed to think of them without a pinch of sadness. Have I been captive to grief for so very long? For the fourth entry, we head to the left path. We again fail the sack puzzle and proceed through the dungeon as normal, avoiding the cotton spores this time. And with that we get the entry, a key memory. On my 5th name day, my parents gifted me with a key wrought in silver, but not the knowledge of what it opened. When you're a woman grown, we will take you to the precious place this key protects, Mother had explained. Father had nodded, saying it was where slumbered the memories which neither we nor Ul'dah should ever forget. I, as a child of 5, understood only that I was being forced to wait for my true present. Oh, how I sulked and fumed back then. Yet now I cling to that fading recollection with desperate fingers, like a failed merchant to her dwindling coin purse. It was too soon after when Mother and Father were called away to Thal's eternal halls. Their sudden absence left me hollow and dazed, my ascension to the throne followed by turbulent days of uncertainty, steeped in sorrow. It seemed I stumbled across the desert, the sands burning one moment, freezing the next. All thought of keys and secret places were cast aside, forgotten. Why had they entrusted such a portentous gift to a daughter so young? Had they foreseen the accident which would befall them? Or had some other factor influenced their action? Their true intentions are lost to time. There is only one thing I know for certain, that the key was left in my hand for a good reason. For the 5th entry, we take the right path. We take a left on the lift and select the first option, the blessed spark, when at the door blocking our path. As we head through the right path, we will actually come across a lot of Amal'dia fortification, left from the time when the Amal'dia assisted with purging the undead. And with this, we get the entry in Father Stead. The Amal'dia constructed Zahar'ak when they came to join Ul'dah in purging the undead infestation from the Subterranean. And if Zahar'ak was their main war camp, then the old fortification we passed through would have served as a forward base. The question then is, why did my parent give me the means to visit these rusted defenses? In my late father's possession was a diary, which made reference to irrefutable evidence of the alliance. Mayhap there is more to the place we have yet to discover. In life, father was staunch opponent to the edict to banish the so-called beast tribes. Arrayed against him were the monetarists, who sought to preserve their special concession and privileges by ousting their competition. It was with the backing of the syndicate that they overruled the Sultan's will and forced the proposal into law. Unwilling to concede defeat, Father intended to take the battle to the course of public consensus. His weapon would not be easily forced document or record, but physical proof of the Belah'dia contribution to Ul'dah's continued prosperity. Then the accident happened, ending his plan to appeal for harmony ere they could truly begin. Which brings us back to this mention of evidence. I know not what form it might take, or indeed if it yet even exists. But should a thorough search of that forgotten base provide us with clues? We are on the cusp of brokering a lasting peace with the Belah'dia. If I can discover an elusive proof, then the aspiration Father had for our nation might finally become reality. For the sixth entry, we continue on the right path. We take the left on the lift, and then select the second option, the Sacred Fire, when the door blocks our path. It is notable that by the end of the right path, we do come across a coffin, where an undead Belah'dia warrior lays at rest, before bursting out of his coffin to fight us. Here she writes the entry, Ul'dah's sin to bear. When the Belah'dia champion burst forth from his casket, the blood knife froze within my veins. He must have suffered injury during the purge, the zombie corruption finding its way into his flesh. The traitor's burn was a concoction by Ul'dah thaumaturges and employed by the reigning Sultan during our war with Sil'dih. Sasagan III even knowingly propagated the fiction that it was the Sil'dihs who devised this abhorrent alchemy in an effort to turn their own citizen into undying soldiers. An accusation from the House of Thorne saw Sasagan III later punished for his heinous act, and thus ended the first old dynasty. His lies, however, would live on to become accepted history. The deceit was upheld by a desire to preserve not only the old dynasty's authority, but also the standing of the Order of Ul'dah, an institution deeply entwined with thaumaturgical practices. And it can be said that few Ul'dahs would wish to accept that their home was built upon the corpses of a city so brutally slain by their forebears. Yet without a clear view of the past, we cannot be sure of our course for the future. The sight of that rotting Belah'dia hero was all too stark a reminder, as a Sultan of the House of Ul, I bear responsibility for my ancestors' atrocities. And though we suffer for the truth, even as Iskar did for hers, the time has come to set the record right. For the seventh entry, we enter the right path. After the first boss, we take the lift to the right, and we kill the drakes from the largest to the smallest, father, mother, brother, sister, and baby. We then grab the incense and kill the undead boss normally. And Nanamo writes the entry to learn more of Myrrh. I wish to consult with the Belah'dia over a certain facet of our expedition, yet I could hardly bring up the subject during one of our regular councils. Should it become known that the royal person has been slipping out of the palace to conduct secret investigation, and my trusted escort would be caught up in an unpleasant storm of repercussions. Nay, I must be discreet. As such, I approached the Belah'dia's war chief at a meeting's end, and engaged him with the usually empty pleasantries, eventually steering the conversation to tribal customs. I explained that the coffin of a zombie-cursed warrior had been discovered within Ul'dah territory, and wondered at the traditional rites one might perform to send his kin's unfortunate soul onto the afterlife. Somewhat taken aback, the war chief advised that it was of paramount importance to avoid disturbing the warrior's undead slumber. Leave the coffin untouched, he warned. Stand facing the valorous spirit and perform a single bow. Offer your respect for a life well lived. Celebrate the warrior's great victory, and then kneel in a moment of reflection. Thus did the Belah'dia mourn comrades fallen on the field of battle, burning myrrh incense at the culmination of the ritual to guide their sanctified souls onto the everlasting flame. I received his answer. I was suddenly struck by a cavillus of questions I had never thought to ask. I felt ashamed at my ignorance, and am now resolved to learn more of this proud people's culture. The next time we enter the dungeon, we go for entry 8. I find it interesting that with Entry 7, we now have the plan for how to deal with the undead Ul'dah. But to get Entry 8, we actually must go into the middle path to learn more about the cities of Ul'dah and Sil'dih. So we take the middle path and fight the final boss after failing the scale puzzle and using the right lever. And after this, Nanamo writes the entry Ul'dah and Sil'dih. When Belah'dia splintered into Ul'dah and Sil'dih, the division only deepened with time. The history books tell the tale of escalating hostilities, of how the advent of the traitor's burn devastated the Sil'dihns and brought the conflict to a horrific end. Ul'dah would later migrate to the site of the fallen metropolis, where even now the ruins of the past dot the landscape or lie hidden from view deep underground. Such remnant proved useful when routing the municipal waterways, and so did they refer to the section of the Subterranean as the Sil'dihn Aqueduct. Given that the war turned savage over the water sources, it seems to be a designation of particularly ghoulish sensibilities. Distasteful naming aside, it should have come to no surprise that those old tunnels fed into other vestiges of Sil'dih, and yet I was wholly unprepared to set foot in the royal palace itself. Had the structure been exposed above ground, the wind-driven sand coupled with the heat of Thanalan's sun would have led to extensive erosion, but cocooned beneath the earth as it was, its chamber had been perfectly preserved. How rare it must be to encounter ruins in such an unspoiled state. It will provide our historians with a wealth of material to study. Assuming they can navigate the intervening passages, we must clear the way first and foremost and secure safe path through. And of the three paths, the middle one is actually my favorite, as I love seeing the old palace. Depending on which way you take in the palace, you can see the dining room, the bedrooms, and of course you see the throne room, which looks absolutely magnificent. And it's interesting to see how different the architecture of Sil'dih is to Ul'dah, and yet holding some slight similarities. We must return to the middle path again for a 9th entry. This time we must fight the final boss after failing the scale puzzle again, but this time using the left lever. And with that, Nanamo writes the passage, raising the flags. When we came across the banner of Sil'dih so alike to our Ul'dah flag, I was reminded that the first sultans of the warring nations were twin brothers, yet the reason behind the design similarity was not to do with sibling imitation. In Belah'dia's time, it was the flame of magic and the fruit of knowledge which set the scales of judgment. Ul'dah took the flame as its own, balancing the scales with a gem of affluence, while Sil'dih claimed the fruit and set it against the helm of might. Each thought himself the rightful heir, and thus did both raise flags depicting the bounties of Belah'dia. Both included a symbol of strength, but the difference lay in the interpretation. Ul'dah believed in the potency of his magic, Sil'dih in his military might. The gladiator who trained in our Colosseum are mayhap the closest embodiment of the Sil'dihn philosophy. In fact, reflecting on the encounter now, the first gladiator construct lurking in the palace depth could not have been more apt incarnation of their belief. From the exquisite embossment of grapes upon his formidable helm, to the way his gleaming form, the same silvery hue of Sil'dihn scales, illuminated the subterranean gloom. Through all these years did he stand patient guard, faithfully serving a master centurion Stead, and a nation long since fallen into ruin. It's enough to turn one's mood melancholy. For entry 10, we again go on the middle path, but this time we put the correct totems on the scale, the helm on the left and the fruit on the right. Then, as we reach the next chamber, we click the gnarled statue. And with that, we get the passage, My Mother's Eyes. This is also an area where we can find a burglar's note, which tells us how to solve the sack puzzle in the left area. How, in the name of Nalthal, the burglar managed to creep into a treasure chamber, sealed off from the outside world for generations? Aside from the gate only my key could open, I saw no other means of entering the ruins, although considering the prevalence of secret doors and passages in its construction, the remnant may very well have other entrances, of which I am simply not aware. Yet in spite of this mystery, I find myself lingering most on the scrawled note our thief left. The first item was an obvious reference to Nasashite, which must somehow relate to one of the ruins' many riddles. It's how it relates to me, however, that truly has my thought in a jumble. Nasashite with the name Ul'dah's jewelers gave to a high-quality Malisite excavated from the reopened Copperbell mines. It was after the calamity, of course, and thus I took umbrage at the merchant using my late mother's name as a means to promote their wares. And then I was presented with a sample. It was as if the gentle sparkle of mother's eyes was captured within the stone. Much to my chagrin, I found myself forced to agree that Nasashite was a perfect fit for this gem of exquisite green. Reaching entry 11, we take our final trip into the middle path. We put the correct totems on the scale, and then at the chamber click the Thal statue. And this leads Nanamo to write the Thorne legacy. Sil'dih Aqueduct, Thorne, Vault. I noticed these words scribbled on the back of the burglar's note, but I was too preoccupied to give them much thought at the time. Did the intruder believe that the secret cache of Thorne riches was to be found somewhere in the waterways? An odd notion, given that the House of Thorne was well known for its honesty and integrity. After all, it was a sultan of their dynasty who willingly transferred power back to the House of Ul. And there was nary a peep to imply any wrongful withdrawals from the royal treasury. Assuming they had secreted wealth into some hidden location, it would have been done with the full cooperation of the Ul family, with the particular passed down to the successive sultans. Father would have known of the arrangement, and he did speak of slumbering memories which should not be forgotten. Was this one of those things my parents wished me to see when I came of age? I have considered 100 potential scenarios, or what they might have meant, each more fanciful than the last, and although the Sil'dihn palace was indeed an eye-opening discovery, I sense that Father alluded to a matter of even deeper import. And that leads us to the final entry. To get this, we must take the right path. And after the first boss, we take the lift to the right and kill the drakes from the largest to the smallest. On the way, we grab the incense, and once we reach the coffin, we do not touch it. Instead, we must use a series of 4 emotes in front of it, those being bow, respect, victory pose, and kneel, in that order, which will lead to Nanamo lighting the incense and a secret area to open up, which also holds a secret boss. And with doing that, we will both get and with the final entry, we both get our fluffy mount, but we also get Nanamo's final writing, which is, in Parchments we trust. Deep beneath Ul'dah, beyond the twisting tunnels of Sil'dihn Aqueduct, we have discovered a vault in which slumbers a precious legacy. In its center, a catalogue of evidence emblazoned with the word, "For coin, country, and comrades in arm, we bequeath this trust to the House of Ul." This solemn declaration, signed by the last Sultan of Thorne, was followed by several pages of florid signatures, a procession of Ul'dah rulers which ends with the name of my own father, and wedged there betwixt one page and the next, a fated missive penned in his distinctive hand. Addressed with the hope that the reader be our darling Nanamo. The letter describes the purpose of the vault. It's a place known only to the royal heirs, a secure archive wherein evidence of Ul'dah's alliance with Belah'dia is preserved. And through tradition dictates, this trust be passed on by word of mouth. Father felt that, should the worst come to worst, it was safer to have an explanation committed to Parchment. And the note writes, "Dearest Nanamo, we wonder what manner of woman you have become. We know the role of Sultana will challenge you in myriad of ways, but no matter how your rule unfolds, remember that you shall ever be our greatest achievement. Seize what happiness you may each day, for joy is worth more than all the gil in Ul'dah." Mother, Father, be assured that it's not sorrow which caused the tears to fall, but overwhelming pride. Now in this moment, I am simply happy to be a daughter. And so end the notes of Nanamo. But with these tales we have learned quite a few things. We now have definitive proof of the cooperation between Belah'dia and Ul'dah. And we also know this cooperation was kept hidden by the monetarists. And when Nanamo's father tried to bring this cooperation to light and strengthen the bond between the Belah'dia and Ul'dah, he was most likely assassinated by the monetarists, allowing them to push Nanamo into the role of Sultana as a 5-year-old child, allowing them to rule in her stead, using her only as a puppet. But Nanamo is a puppet no more. She has already started peace talks with the Belah'dia, and the time for monetarist ruling Ul'dah has passed. While she must still contend with them and the syndicate, she is no longer the easily manipulated child she was. We don't know what she's going to do with this information, but I believe the true history of the Belah'dia and Ul'dah might actually be exposed at last, and probably with it, the true story of the Fall of Sil'dih. It's not going to be an easy thing for the people of Ul'dah to face, just like it was not an easy thing for the people of Isgard to accept that it was their countrymen who started the Dragonsong War. But as we leave the Sil'dihn subterranean and step back into the light, we are also hopefully stepping into a brighter future. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is probably the longest lore video I have ever made, and I really hope it was informative. So if you made it to the end, I am very proud of you. Good job. But now tell me in the comments, have you finished the variant dungeon? Did you have fun doing it? Did you do it with random groups or with friends? And have you tried out the Criterion dungeon? It would also help me a lot if you could do all the good YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, and if you want to be an absolutely amazing person, share the video with a friend. But for now, whatever you end up doing, I hope you have a lovely day.